Hello everyone, Panda here with a quick disclaimer. Green Team received an arc of When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi, courtesy of NetGalley and Tor. We thank them for the early copy for review. All opinions are our own. Hope you enjoy this slightly chaotic episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium with the person who volunteered to edit this episode, our furry little friend, BefuddledPanda.
Hi!
And we have our frequent contributor, especially to our Scalzi episodes, our woolly friend, Lammy Lambs.
Hello, hello, hello.
And we have our feathery friend, Cesky, which means
yes, hello.
Chicken.
There's nobody's gonna understand that reference except the four of us.
No!
It's a very specific reference to my username, yes.
Well, and your username means a Czech chicken.
Yeah. I was here for that, and I will forget it in an hour. So, when I go back and listen to this, nothing.
Oh
New
my
information every time you listen. It's the perfect podcast.
Today we are discussing an arc, a John Scalzi arc. This is our third arc from him, and it is called The Moon Hits Your Eye. Just The Moon Hits Your Eye.
When the moon hits your eye.
When the
Like
moon
a
hits your
big
eye.
pizza pie? Pizza
That's
pie?
pie.
amore.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't believe you didn't know this was like a line from a song.
I don't know.
Maybe I'm just old.
Yeah.
Probably. So, we're going to start with the structure of the book, and we're going to start with Lammy, because Lammy has opinions.
Wait.
Wait, we should do general feelings first. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, fine. General feelings.
Non-spoiler.
I loved it, and I've read it twice, and I loved it the second time much more than I loved it the first time.
Oh yeah, you read it
Really?
twice.
Well,
That's intense.
NetGalley read it to me, which is very weird because it's like AI generated, and so like they don't understand. It doesn't understand periods or tone of voice, and so sometimes you have to like open NetGalley. Like, what did they just say?
Oh,
So
interesting.
anyway.
I am a little more mid on this one. I didn't love it like I've loved other Scalzi books, but I didn't hate it. So I'd give it like a firm 3.75 to 4. There are parts I really liked, and then there are other parts where I'm like, I don't really care.
Oh, I didn't give it a number. I would say 4.5.
Nice. Okay, I'll go next. I really liked it. This is my fourth Scalzi book that I've read, and it's my favorite of the 4 that I've read so far.
Well, tell people what the 4 books are so they've got some scope here.
Well, Fuzzy Nation, Red Shirts, and the Kaiju Preservation Society, and When the Moon Hits Your Eye is my 4th. I like this one better than Kaiju, which I know, Lammy, I'm sorry, but it is true.
Okay, so
Wow.
Panda finished the book before me, and I heard her whole spiel on, this is the best Scalzi book I've read, and I liked it more than Kaiju, and I'm like, I'd like to like this more than Kaiju as well, because I loved Kaiju. My average Scalzi rating is 4.5. He never dips below 4 for me. Dude is phenomenal. He hits exactly where I like to read, and this book missed. This is 2.5, maybe a 3.
Oh,
Okay.
man. That's tough. That's
Oh,
tough.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I want you to love this book, not because I love it, but because I want you to not read things that are amiss for you. Does that make sense?
Okay, but on my own podcast, when we read bad stuff, it's way more entertaining.
I have questions about that, but not for the podcast. So what do we think about the structure? And this is where we're going to go to Lammy.
Wait, did you give the premise of this book?
Yeah, let's get
the moon turns to cheese, and then stuff happens, and then
Well, that's a spoiler. Cut that out.
That's a
Cut that
spoiler.
out. You
Spoiler.
spoiler.
The moon.
Oh my goodness, this
turns to
episode is going to be
cheese.
a pain to edit.
I'm sorry, Panda.
I'm the worst with spoilers.
You started by having read stuff, and that's reading out loud is her kryptonite. We know
I
this.
didn't have her read anything. She ended up not reading anything.
She ad-libbed it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the moon turns to cheese, and all of the rock samples turn to cheese, and stuff happens.
And people are baffled.
Freaking out.
Befuddled, if you will.
Befuddled, that's true.
And they're trying to
That
figure out what's
was
going on
adorable.
and how to live their lives now that the moon has turned to cheese.
Turn to organic compound.
I'm sorry, organic.
Very similar to cheese in appearance.
Organic matrix is the exact
excuse
phrasing.
me. I'm so wrong. I'm sorry,
I mean,
Lammy.
NASA, man. NASA has
Okay.
going to be so angry with you. So, Lammy.
So let's talk structure, which this book doesn't really have. What it is
Oh.
a bunch of like vignettes or short stories that bounce all over the place. We very occasionally get repeat characters, but except for one instance, we don't get any repeat viewpoints. And this isn't to say that this is a bad way to write a book. This is to say that this wasn't the way I wanted this book to be.
I see.
Yeah.
I wanted something more structured, more focused.
Mm.
I wanted this to be an Andy Weir book is what I really wanted.
Oh.
So basically what
interesting.
you're saying is that you're mad that he didn't write the book that you wanted.
Yes.
Okay.
This is entirely a me problem, for sure. Like, I understand this. Like,
I think that, Lammy, I'm a little bit more with you on this one, that while overall the short story kind of structure of every day afterwards kind of worked for me for the most part, but can't say it worked for me the most part. Worked for me like slightly more often than it didn't. But a lot of them felt like the moon turning to cheese was kind of more just to the side of it. And that I wanted that to be more of the main focus of every chapter, right? Like,
Interesting.
this is how the moon turning to cheese affected this person directly. This is how it turned this person. There's a couple scenes that I really thought were hilarious and fun that we can talk about. But like, there's a couple where it's like, this is just your life. It just happened to be the moon also turned to cheese when we got to your viewpoint here. And like, so those ones didn't like ring with me.
there's one specifically that is like 7 or 8 pages of just going through this person's life up to this point, and then the moon turned to cheese, and here's another page or two of whatever.
Yeah.
I actually really like the structure because, first of all, I didn't really bother reading too much into what the synopsis was. And so for me, it was just, I don't know where he's going to go with this. And then once I figured out the structure of basically it's getting a more global view. Cesky, you had said that you wanted more of getting to see how specific people were really impacted by the moon turning into cheese. I felt like I got that. There were definitely specific characters where you really saw how they were impacted. And it was at the end, I didn't know how he was going to resolve the moon turning into cheese. And it's like, is this just how it's going to be? Is this everything going to descend into chaos? And then how he ended it, I was like, okay, that was like a neat bow, logical, satisfying for me.
I don't know. I'm going to have to probably disagree a little bit here with Lammy. I don't want to talk too much about it before we get into the spoilers because it really needs that. But when I was going into the ending, I'm like, what's going to happen? What are they going to do? And then I was like, oh, that happened. Of course that happened. That was like, it was like that was the only thing I could think that would actually fix it, but it didn't feel as satisfying to me as something else, or as far as even just pulling the trigger and going through it the whole way, right? Because he's setting it up for one path, and then he kind of felt like he almost pulled back on it at the last second.
So can I give my feeling now?
No, sorry, Brad. We don't want to listen to your feelings about this book that you loved.
So the first thing I would say about the structure is that I love the vignettes. If you liked World War Z or Love Actually movie, that kind of structure, this will jive with you. There are overlaps. What I also liked is it introduced the whole idea of how social media affects how people think about things. So you have like things about Reddit and things about YouTube and things about political scams that they try to turn into media events and things like that. It felt very much like how our world kind of is post-COVID, where there's a lot of distrust of institutions and conspiracy theories and whatnot. And I really liked how it grabbed onto that. I don't know that it will date well. It's very much a book of the last couple of years. Does that make sense? And that concerns
Yeah,
me
I
about
hear
the
what
book.
you're saying. I think it can last, like, I think it can age well for the fact that you can replace the moon turning into cheese as an event with anything else, like any other like global kind of event. And it's more about the exploration of how, like World War Z, how people respond, how people choose to react.
And that's something that I really enjoyed about this because I felt like it treated all of its characters with a lot of grace, except for maybe um like people from a bunch of different backgrounds have all these very different reactions,
Mhm.
but none of them are scorned for their reaction. Does that make sense? I feel like it was
Sure.
generous to its characters, and I really, really enjoyed that part of the book.
Mhm.
I am so glad that you guys have brought up World War Z, because that was motivated. Like, the structure for World War Z was motivated within the text to be like that. Those were accounts of what was happening collected afterward. This
Fair.
is not that. It
Yeah.
is fully unmotivated within the text. It's just a thing the way Scalzi felt like writing it. And it does not compare favorably to my mind, because I've read both, and World War Z was a masterpiece, and this was fun a lot of the time, but no.
What I really loved about it is how the moon turning to cheese was not the thing. It was the connections, how it, like I said, having an execution focuses the mind. And it was about the relationships with the different characters. Like, you have brothers who are having a feud, and they were.
I agree with what you're saying a little bit, but I think to its detriment, we're not spending enough time with the characters to get more satisfaction from those kind of relationships. Like, yeah, the Cheese Brothers story is one of my favorites, right? I like them both, the both parts of it, but we get 2 chapters with them, and that's kind of like, that's it with them, versus most people we get one section, one day in their life. And that's not enough for me to really feel 100% connected to them and like see their relationships. It didn't feel like it was connected enough to them. I wanted it to be more connected to the moon turning into cheese. Like the guy who has, this is a little spoiler, but one of the guys who's giving away his stuff to his ex-wife, I was like, this story has basically nothing to do with the cheese moon. Like, it's a nice story, but like, I want more cheese moon. I want more astronauts figuring it out.
Yeah, I think part of it is just the expectations going in. And with me, because I had very little expectations going in, I was along for the ride. And I hear what you're saying, Lammy, about the comparison to World War Z and how this is a lesser version. But I think this version, because of the humor, because of how ridiculous, yes, zombies is ridiculous, but zombie is like in the horror realm. And it's just it by nature more serious. In this case, the moon turning into cheese is such a ridiculous premise. I think this was really a playground for Scalzi to experiment, to explore. Like, if I were this kind of character, if I were a university student, if I were an astronaut, if I were a billionaire tech CEO, right? Like,
If I were a Hollywood producer, if I were a
yeah,
pastor.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, how would these people, these characters react? Would they do anything different? Do they sink into despair? Do they are very curious and they want to find out more? Are they going to take advantage of the situation? How will they take advantage? And so to me, it was more of an exploration of humanity rather than a specific character.
And that's how I felt about it too. And what I will say is this is very different from anything I've read by him.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's true.
And I appreciate that as well, that he's going out on a limb. There's this very cynical part where there are bankers talking and they're like talking about like the phone tree.
Oh, that section was okay. So overall, I thought this book was very weak. Many of the individual like little vignettes were phenomenal. Like,
Yeah.
weirdly enough, one of the best ones was the like board of directors at a bank. Was
Yeah.
That one was so good.
And they're like, no, they don't hate it because it's AI. They hate it because they have to yell at it all the time to say, just, I want to talk to a real person.
Yeah. They hate it because it exists.
I do think it's very relatable. It's very
Yes, exactly.
realistic. Yeah.
And what I want to say about the whole phone tree thing is my son got his credit card number stolen
Oh.
for the first time. And he comes down to me. He's like, I've been on hold for like 45 minutes and all I want to do is talk to a real person. I'm like, welcome to adulthood, dude.
Oh, did he yell representative in the phone?
Normally when I do it, I just say real life person.
Representative. Say that word.
Maybe that'll work faster. I don't know.
I would say one of the other things that I thought was a bit more of it worked in the story, but to me personally, it was more of a miss, was the, is it Jody? He's the billionaire who does stuff. He felt like a really big call out to a specific person until Jody referenced said person that I thought he was he was being represented.
He was 100%
as in story.
Calling out. Yeah. 100%.
Well, he was. And then he calls him out literally in the text, And I was like, oh, I don't love it as much when Scalzi does really pop reference here, like culturally super relevant things like that. Sure. It just takes me out of the story a little bit more.
Do you think if you read it 5 years from now, you would feel different?
I don't know how I'd feel reading it 5 years from now. Like that's a tough question. Like, I'm not saying he did it poorly. Yeah. I'm just saying it just
too real.
Too real. It pulls me out a little bit too much when it's so relevant.
This is one of the reasons why I'm concerned about how it's going to age.
Yeah. Well, there are other things that could impact how it ages that we can't talk about. But anyway.
Yeah, what if the real moon turns to real cheese?
Exactly, guys.
That would make this book impossible to read. Just way too much trauma.
Yeah, we would know exactly what's going to happen though in a year.
Mm-hmm.
What year does this take place in? I got confused.
I don't think it's ever specified, but we don't think it matters what
Modern
year it's
times.
in.
Yeah, just today plus or minus 5 years.
It would have to be plus because of COVID, because I do talk about COVID a little bit.
That's true. Today plus or minus 4 years.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, are we getting into spoilers?
I think we've got
time. Yeah. So, as I said, after Panda edited it, you won't hear me say this, but the moon turns to cheese and a bunch of stuff happens, and then it's not cheese anymore. So, what do we want to talk about? Our favorite vignettes, or do we want to talk about how Lammy feels about the end of the book?
Oh, you're going to go right there?
I want to hear Lammy's. We can start with the bad and then end with the good.
All right.
Okay. So at very few points in this book did I have any idea where it was heading. Like before Cheese Everest happens. By the way, about halfway through the book, a chunk of the cheese moon blasts off into space, and it works out that it will hit the Earth in about 2.5 years and obliterate all life on the planet. Most of the rest of the book after this point is just people facing their inevitable mortality.
Yeah.
Which was great. I really, really liked those parts. The end of the book is the moon, just as mysteriously as it turned to cheese, unturns to cheese. And Cheese Everest just disappears. At no point are we ever given any sort of explanation of why this happened or why it stopped happening. Not even nobody even guesses.
Uh-huh.
It just happens and they just accept it and move forward in a way that would never happen in real life. People would be like, is it aliens? Is there magic? Like, what happened? Yeah, that would be all anybody would talk about right up until the whole, Cheese Everest gonna kill us all thing. Then that would sort of take over. But that isn't really a focus, and I feel like that was a miss. But mostly, the ending was a huge cop-out.
Yep, I agree with you there, 100%.
Oh, yeah. I really liked how he ended it.
With Cheese Everest just disappearing?
No, the end.
Oh,
well, all of it, really. Like, Cheese Everest disappearing, the moon turning back from cheese, and, the end where they talk about, people thinking it was a conspiracy.
Just a hoax, yeah.
A hoax, yeah, all of that, whatever. at that point I was already out of the book because he like spent so much time building all of this up and then just poof, it goes away. No real explanation.
I want to add, I had a hope when I saw, day, what's it say, 36,524. I was like, I read that one. I'm like, oh, it's a hoax. And I was like, I hope there's one more chapter that's like 790,000 days in the future and it turns to cheese again.
Oh.
Just like it's a repeating thing that happens every so often. We've just never like noticed before or something. Or
what?
I was kind of hoping it would do it again. Because my thought was we must be living in a simulation, and somehow a variable got switched, and it went from moon to cheese, and then the creators were like, "Oh, let's fix that and put that back." They caught it.
That is another viable explanation that did not get explored at all.
Yeah,
I'm actually okay that he didn't go down that route because, first, there were already speculations and exploration when the moon first turned to cheese. Like everybody who knows that the moon has turned to cheese is like, how is this even possible? And there isn't going to be an explanation, in my opinion, outside of like, yes, it was aliens or whatever, that was going to satisfy the reader.
Okay, but
Davis, the astronaut, his response to that is there's a whole lot of things we don't understand.
Yes.
And he's like, I'm fine with right, exactly. And I'm fine with calling it a miracle. We don't understand this right now. It's a miracle. But so is having a baby.
Right.
Having, and I actually really like that part because it was like, look, we don't understand everything. That doesn't mean we won't someday understand it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that the things that we understand are any less miraculous.
Right.
Okay, so yes, all of that does happen, but we never get like a check-in with Reddit of like, here's how I think the moon turned. Like, nobody actually explores any possibilities. It just immediately gets shunted off to we can't possibly know, and
that's fair.
Does not get explored beyond that.
I see. That would have been a good counterpoint to that last chapter where it's like the Reddit post that it's a hoax, followed immediately by the Reddit post of here's how I would have done it, kind of a thing. Yeah,
I could see that, but I think at the point where the reaction to the moon turning back into the moon, it was such a relief. Like, oh my goodness, we're gonna be okay. And it was very much to me about how quickly people move on. And
I could see that.
You see where, people are like, oh, did it even really happen? And all of that. It's so real that people move on so quickly.
I think that's how we all kind of felt about the whole COVID thing, right? Like we're all freaked out and living in our houses I mean, I'm still living in my house too, but you know what I mean? Like,
you're isolated.
You're afraid and you're freaked out. And then, we have a vaccine now. Young people are safe relatively from this disease, like all this
stuff.
So that's how I felt. I felt like this was a COVID book.
I don't know that it's valuable to our time to go into a serious discussion of COVID for this.
No, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying I felt like it was an emotional response to that period of time.
Potentially.
Sure. I kind of wish he had just let the moon Everest hit the planet and killed everybody. That's where I thought it was really going. And then when it happened, I was just like, it felt like a little bit of a letdown that it just disappeared immediately. With maybe if something had happened in the story where it's like something is pulling, or like that thing we plotted to hit Earth is actually not going to hit Earth somehow.
Sure.
Maybe if we hung a lantern or did something on it where it's like, oh, it looks like it's going to hit us. Oh, now for some reason we still don't understand it's not going to hit us. And then it turned back, kind of giving it the illusion that something was doing something or something. It felt almost too sudden.
Did the thing and the stuff.
Yeah. I don't, like it's tough.
There is an asteroid that is
gonna kill us.
Well, we don't know if it'll hit, what percentage chance it will hit Earth, but it is a sizable chunk of rock. So that is a little too real. But I think he did go into this with a particular message that he wanted to communicate. And that message wasn't, oh, a hunk of cheese destroys Earth. It was definitely something else.
It's true, and I'm kind of out of things to be mad about personally with the book. I'm sure Lammy might have a couple more thoughts, but personally, I liked a lot of other parts.
I feel like the eclipse with the sun, is what caused the cheese to go away. The cheese
You
Everest.
think so?
Yeah, that's my feeling. Because when the moon and the sun connected, it sucked cheese Everest away.
There's some
This
sort of
is my-
celestial synergy happening there.
Sure.
Something like that.
Okay.
I do find it interesting that it's actually one lunar cycle too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lammy, what was your favorite vignette? Your little short story here.
Ooh, I don't know that I can do one. I'll just
do
list a couple.
We'll do threes.
Okay,
So we'll go around the round table.
Not in any particular order, as deference to how Red does her gratitude lists. So the one with the bank board of directors talking about, like, they've already plotted out end of the world scenarios and how people will act. Like, that was very interesting to me.
Yeah, that was good.
The author lady who like had the fantasy world in her head since she was like 4.
Oh, that was such a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was okay. That's the one that like barely touches on anything about the moon. Like, it's literally just like, we're talking about this girl and her life, and she wants to be a writer. And then at the very end of the thing, oh yeah, the moon turned to cheese, and now she's got writer's block, and her husband's like, no, you should still write.
Yeah. Now you're gonna die, so it's kind of a time crunch on your dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the 2 stories of the feuding Cheese Brothers.
Oh, the feuding Cheese Brothers is up there for me too. It's so funny.
Which again has almost nothing to do with the moon having turned to cheese. They run cheese shops.
Yeah. It's
I mean,
the impact.
it does boost their sales. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Well, and also almost riot, and
I
That was
love
funny.
that. I loved it so much. And they're like, yeah, we basically just hold grudges because we hold grudges, not because we actually take any of this.
Oh yeah, their wives are best friends. Their employees are dating.
Yeah.
The kids all hang out. Like, it's just literally just these 2 guys.
right.
But you
That's
know
funny.
what? The big brother's there. Don't mess with my kin.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it.
All right, Red, what's your favorite?
My favorites. I really do love the whole prostitute scene about this real estate broker who used to be a sex worker, and she.
Yes, I remember that one now.
And the politician.
The politician, yeah.
Yeah. There's 2 things I like about it. One is that you don't know the party of the person who is the politician, because that's not throwing
It
shade, and I
doesn't
appreciate
matter.
that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And just what he has her do, and he would much rather say that he had sex with her than that he
You
made
don't
her
have to
dress
say
up.
the words.
Yeah.
You really don't have
Just
to
read
say
the
all
book
the
and
words.
you'll know. Read the book and you'll know.
I'm just saying that was so funny to me. And then I really did enjoy the billionaire. Like, he's a jerk. First of all, I love that. Second of all, especially towards his end, he's like, oh, I just pissed off a government that shoots knife missiles into people's houses when they're mad at us. I probably really screwed up here.
Luckily, it ended up not mattering.
I like that he almost touched the moon before he died.
Yeah.
Well, the moon touched him.
The moon touched him. He didn't touch the moon. The moon touched him. That's
but I just enjoy all his machinations to get where he wants to get. He's like, well, it is in Ecuador, and so it is technically mine, and so NASA really can't do anything about it. I love that whole thing.
And how basically, I mean, the technology that his company developed, right? It can be all automated. So there wasn't much for him to do.
He's just like, I'm really bored right now.
Think about that.
And the other one sorry.
No, and how he didn't actually complete any of the astronaut training, and so he had to find out the hard way about how to do his business in space.
That was really, really funny.
Luckily, it wasn't a very descriptive scene, but it does leave it to your imagination.
Yeah, and he spends the first 8 hours vomiting or dry gagging.
Oh yeah.
As you would, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. for sure. And then I really like the old retired dudes in the cafe. And there's, I think, 2 vignettes with them.
Yeah.
Yes, different viewpoints for each, but yeah,
Right.
it's the same characters in the same place.
And the one that honestly touched me the most is when the pastor he's like having his conversation with God. And he's like, look, I'm really struggling here with my faith. I need some help.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help your people. I need some help myself. And I just love that. It was so human and so vulnerable.
I agree. I mean,
Sure.
all of the scenes you guys have mentioned, I really enjoy because overall, I really enjoyed this book. I guess ones that we haven't talked about yet, I wasn't quite sure where it was going when we first got introduced to the Hollywood producer.
Oh no,
And-
that was one of mine. You
Oh,
took
really?
it. It's
I'm
so
sorry.
funny.
Sorry,
You
sorry,
can
sorry.
share. You
Talk
guys
about
can
it, talk
share
about it.
things.
No, you go. It's fine. You got it. You're started.
It was just so funny and like, I mean, I'm not in the Hollywood industry, but
You're not, Panta?
No,
Oh.
I'm
I thought
not.
you were a mogul. Like,
Okay, can you send, or can you just delete the email with my script?
You wanted to adapt this book, I know, and then change the ending. But it just seemed like it a very realistic experiences that a producer would have, where all these people are just like pitching random stuff however they can, and all the puns, all the cheese puns.
That was so funny. And then the first one that comes in that's not cheese related.
Right.
She's
She
like,
just fires
"You're
it, yeah.
fired. You're
Yeah.
golden. You're good."
Is it a comedy?
Like-
No? Okay.
And the one dude who was like, it's not just a comedy. It's a musical comedy. It was amazing.
That was funny. Yeah, I think my favorites were the Hollywood director, the feuding cheese brothers. Of course, they were hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the Saturday Night Live skit where they're we
that
got these empty
was-
tickets because there's nobody's going, and they go and he's like, "Can we just leave?" And the person who brought him's like, "No, this is objectively funny, like skits and things that are horribly flopping. I have to take notes. I have to like figure out what's going on.
This is historic.
This is
By
like."
the way, we also have our second riot because we have
Yeah.
2 riots in
Oh
this
yeah,
book.
yeah.
And then to mention one that wasn't mentioned, I really liked the other billionaire whose only desire was to eat the cheese before the other billionaire.
Oh my god.
And since he couldn't like actually get the cheese because it wasn't there, and they had the sniffer who could tell it out, but they made something that tasted or smelled like exactly like it.
Right.
Well, okay, so to put some context, that's Augustine. He's the head of this museum at the very beginning of the book.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
And so his guy who handles his finances, because he's so horrible at his money, like the whole family is like, no, we got to get this guy under control. He gets hired by the manager to sniff the cheese.
no, I know. He's still a super sniffer though. I can't sniff a cheese and then be like, yes, I could recreate that in the kitchen with other ingredients, or like
Right.
that's
Can articulate all the different notes.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. I'd be
It's
like,
amazing.
cheese. Yes, okay, I got it. That is cheese. And I'd probably be wrong half the time with all the
Yeah.
weird cheese that's out there.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, but I like that he's like, we're gonna give a substantial
Donation.
donation. Yes, a substantial
Yeah, but like
donation.
months later, so
Yes,
nobody will
right, exactly.
suspect.
One of the things that I did find interesting is it talks about how we only know like the names of 2 people that landed on the moon, even though there's been a bunch more. And
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a fascinating thing. I was like, I never thought about that.
I mean, there are people who
true.
know the names of all of these people, but just as general knowledge,
us.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
weird nerd people.
I mean, they
Which
don't
is
have to be weird.
No, I mean that was
Just
actually one of the
passionate.
that was
Okay,
one
but-
of the vignettes.
But Red, we are weird nerd people already. We're just not
Okay.
that specific brand of weird nerd person.
I mean, fair enough. And I wouldn't call myself a weird nerd person. I'm just
I would-
mean,
I would definitely call you that, yes. I'm calling you that right now to your
I
face.
mean, we're on a podcast about a book who made the moon turn to cheese, and you read it twice. So, I mean, this
I read
is
all the
totally,
books twice.
that's on you. That's on you. That's a weird thing you do.
And I've read the book twice, and I can't even remember the last man on the moon's name, which apparently there was a movie in production for in this world.
Mm.
Do any of you remember the name?
No.
I just okay. Listeners at home, I just shrugged.
I remember the man who was killed by the cheese, and all of the men who were almost killed by the cheese. And I liked the guy who's like, he wrote a great fiction book, and he's like, oh, I just released it 3 weeks after the other guy released a better book about my stuff. I'm going to write this weird book and make way more money doing that, especially because the moon turned to cheese.
It was a pop science book. It was not a fiction book. It was a pop science book.
Yeah, it was pop
whatever. I just love that he gets to go buy himself a suit. And I love the transcript. So they do all these little like alt chapters. So you'll like have an Ask Me Anything Reddit. You'll have like the conspiracy Reddit. You'll have the transcript of the speech of the dude. I just like that aspect. It kind of feels very like how our media works right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that. But again, I'm wondering how it's going to age because we don't know how it's all going to change. But, whatever. It's a nice little history piece for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. If a giant chunk of the moon breaks off and is going to destroy all life on Earth in about 2.5 years, what are you going to do? You gonna do what the banks said you were going to do and go visit your family for that last Christmas beforehand and then fully give up on society? Because why?
I thought they put it pretty succinctly there. That's kind of how people live for the last reunion. Then I like the instead of taking people money out, just give them a big credit card with a huge limit. I'm like, yeah, that would do it for me. Unfortunately, I'd take the credit card and go after in 2 years until it matters.
It seems like a win-win for everybody involved, because for most people, like this is an outright win because you don't ever have to pay it back because everyone will be dead. For the bank, this is a win because it doesn't matter if they don't collect because everybody will be dead. And on the off chance that the world doesn't end, then they get ownership of this massive pile of debt that they can sell off to a debt collection service.
It's so cynical.
I hate it.
But that's how it works.
In the book, or you hate that in real life?
It's real.
I don't hate how he wrote it. I hate that it's so real.
Like, of all the things in this book, I feel like that one was the most well-researched. Like, I feel like he actually put in legwork for that.
Maybe he read, like, The Big Short. And, well, he also lived through 2000.
Yeah, I was going to say, we all lived through that.
Yeah.
I may have lived through it, but I wasn't doing a whole lot of home buying at that time, so it really didn't, get into my brain.
Oh, man. I was doing home buying. It was bad news. It was so
great
awful.
movie, though. It's got Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to answer Lammy's question, what would I do?
Yeah. What are you going to do?
I would probably freak out for a good chunk of the time. And then somehow try to make peace. And then probably go tackle my bucket list.
I would not quit my job. I just stop going.
Quiet quitting, right?
And if I can get a bank to offer me a ton of credit, fantastic. I can continue functioning as long as society continues functioning. But there is no way that I'm going to work a single extra day.
Yeah.
After I find out that humanity is 100% guaranteed doomed, and here is when it will happen.
Right.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
I would travel for the first year and spend the next year with my family. That's what I would do.
It's a lot of books to be read before I die, so I can't allow the moon to hit the Earth. Sorry.
Was it the bus driver that was like, I'm going to read this really big book if it kills me? Like, you're going to die anyway. So
that was one of the 3 coffee shop old guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to read this terrible, terrible book. I will finish this before the apocalypse, no matter what.
Yeah, right.
And like he's
already
not
what I would do.
He's already partway into the book, so he knows how bad it is.
I would not read Infinite Jest, Huron. I would not, even with the apocalypse coming.
Yeah,
Hear
that's
me?
not on the list. The apocalypse TBR. It's
It's gonna
definitely not
adjust.
on
It's
there.
not on the list.
I think I would dig into way more like progression fantasy lit RPG stuff because I've really been enjoying some of the stuff from
Yeah.
that genre, and I'll just go absolutely ham on it.
I would probably become more turn more to the spiritual side of things.
I'll bring us back around. I'll read more Scalzi and keep it
You're
back.
Oh,
I'll read
I would for sure
read the other Scalzi books.
I would for sure
All
keep
of them.
rereading Scalzi. Like I dip one of his books in about every 4 or 5 that I do.
Nice.
Nice.
So what kind of cheese was the moon, guys? Just to close it out.
Green. It was green cheese.
Okay, so with the way it functions as the moon, it sounds like it has a pretty high moisture content. So it's not
Yeah.
going to be a dry cheese like a Parmesan or a
That's
Reggiano,
Not a
Reggiano?
crumbly one.
Yeah, definitely not a goat cheese. Those are like fully
pretty
different
moist.
texture.
Yeah.
Pretty moist. So I'm going to go with brie, like a really soft cheese.
I guess if a giant chunk of brie hit the earth.
I mean, at the point the size it is, it doesn't matter what it's made of. We're all dying no matter what happens when it's that big. It
We're
can
gonna
be made
all
of
have cheese.
pillows and cookies and we'd still die. I don't know cheese very well besides, like your super basic. So I'll just say it's cheddar cheese.
Mm.
I'm gonna go with
cheddar.
Cesky. Cheddar is like in between the soft and the hard.
Yeah, it's a
And
good
the
medium
moisture thing.
cheese.
Yeah, exactly. So I would
Yeah.
say it would be. I don't think that something like super soft would last even 2 weeks in space.
That's
And I'm
definitely
okay.
why I picked it, is because it was a medium cheese, definitely.
Bear in mind that the surface of the moon is getting cooked constantly. Like half of the moon is getting up to like 220 C, which will burn any cheese.
So
Like, that
then
is
why
way too hot for
isn't
cheese.
Mount Everest cheese going out the, as they call it, the west side of the moon? I think in one of the vignettes, like away from, like getting blown out on the non-cooked side.
Isn't there just like volcanoes all
Yeah, it was just
over?
it was undersurface steam pressure basically
Yeah.
because of
No, I
the
know.
gigantic mass. It condensed all the water, and at those kind of pressures, it boils into steam, and that produces even more pressure, which then it doesn't really matter where heat is coming from at that point. It's just going to release the weak via the like most accessible path. Wherever the amount of cheese between steam pocket and surface is like the lowest, the least.
And it was also collapsing in on itself all the time, too. So, like, it wasn't like a sturdy
Right.
shape.
And I would say that you guys are both correct, and you guys are thinking about it more than Scalzi thought about it.
And the reason that it's almost certainly going to hit Earth, and so would anything else likely ejected from the
Gravity
moon, is
well.
either it's going to either crash back to the moon or it's going to hit Earth because it's already in orbit. Like, the amount of velocity you would need to add to it to do anything, like to get it even slightly further out from the moon's orbit, is so enormous.
Yeah.
And unless you have an eclipse and the sun sucks Cheddar Mount Everest into the sun.
Well, we can't bar everything that could happen. We just can only work on what we know has happened in the past and may
The
or
moon
may
has
not happen
printed
again.
cheese. Like, that is a thing that happens in this book. Like, none of it makes sense.
I would say
All
it's
right.
in fact the main thing that happens in this book.
It's the main event.
Okay. Any
I have a
last
question.
thoughts okay.
Well, I have a question for everybody. What is your best theory on what caused the cheese moon? Because it doesn't get
it's,
addressed in the book at all. So, like, what do you got?
I told
You want me to go
already,
first?
oh yeah, go first.
Okay. I'm going to go with gigantic, cheese-loving aliens who
Mhm.
want to bake a gigantic cheese. And the
Mhm.
only heat source viable enough for that is a star. So they just fly around the universe, turning large objects that are within the right range of a star to cook it properly into cheese. And then they let it bake for a month, and then they take it back.
I mean, it's a good theory.
I love it.
I do.
I
was
told
just
you
going to
mine.
say a multiverse. I was just going to say it's a multiverse that somehow we got swapped.
I'm a simulation error. Code got mixed up, turned it to cheese. They fixed the code, turned it back to moon.
I think I'm on Cesky's theory.
Yeah.
That theory train. Because I'm not as imaginative, and I don't necessarily buy the alien kind of situation. So simulation it is.
Baked brie. I wish I had thought of it, Lammy.
I mean, baked brie is delicious. We have it with
really is.
brandied macadamia nuts in the holidays. It's really good.
Okay, so are we ready to close out?
Sorry to all the lactose intolerant people.
I know, right? That is really sad. I feel bad for people who are lactose intolerant. In fact, I am a little bit, not bad.
So am I.
And cheese is just amazing. It's so good. I love it. Lammy, do you have something you want to plug?
Sure. If you enjoyed hearing me trash this book and want to hear me trash other books, specifically a couple of them by Brandon Sanderson, I do a podcast called the Cosmere Deep Dive Podcast. And if you want specifically the ones that I'm trashing, you want to go to our latest releases, which is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and then go back a little bit to White Sand. Hated both of them.
Wow.
Lammy, we almost can't be friends anymore.
Well, give a listen to my podcast. You'll understand why.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you, Craig, for loaning us a little portion of your media empire. And thank you, Horizon Brave, for starting all. For Cesky.
Hello.
Panda.
Hi. Bye.
And Lammy.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Little Red Buck. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. See you later.
Toodles. Not in any particular order, as deference to Red. Whoa, where'd she go?
I don't know.
Probably misclicked. She's
Red
back.
just disappeared. Okay. Not in any particular
Sorry about that.
order, as deference to how Red does her gratitude lists.